We've got a bunch of questions that are coming in, and so I wanted to put some questions to you, Jonathan, that we've got coming in from Jen. We've got, given that our public health officer, Dr. Henry, is encouraging more people to go outside family bubbles, what are the plans for playgrounds and future plans for splash parks this summer? It's getting harder to keep our toddlers and kids entertained. Is there any possibility for playgrounds being opened in some way this summer?
Yeah, so I think the city, like many cities in the region, recognize the important role that city parks were going to play during this crisis to provide people a little bit of relief and a way to get outside during this period. We are anticipating to hear more information from the Premier tomorrow about how do we come out and phase out of the restrictions that we have in place. And based on the information that we get there, we are anticipating that we're going to be able to relax some of the restrictions that have been put in place, particularly when it comes to outdoor park facilities. So at this point in time, there's no set dates for a lot of things, but even just a week and a half ago, we reopened the dog parks because we felt that it was safe and okay to do that. And I expect over the coming weeks and months, we're going to start to see a lot of city facilities start to reopen and become open to the public. But we want to make sure we're doing it right and following the guidance from our public health officials. There's also a lot of discussion amongst all of the cities, particularly in Metro Vancouver, to try and be as coordinated as possible, because it can be quite confusing for there to be different rules between the different cities. So there are a lot of conversations between all the cities on how do we actually coordinate our efforts together and start to kind of deal with these restrictions in a coordinated approach.
Terrific. Thank you for that. We have a shout out from Michael and a shout out from Sharon, and a question for me and then a question for you. A question for me from Brad. What is the Government of Canada doing for small businesses when they don't qualify for the relief efforts for rent relief, as well as their landlords not wanting to participate with rent relief? For the moment, we're pressing the government. The rent relief program that was put into place doesn't allow all businesses. In fact, it excludes a whole range of businesses from commercial rent relief. Gord Johns, our small business critic for the NDP, and myself proposed something that was simple and would allow all small businesses to qualify. And we're going to continue to push that because the current rent relief scheme just doesn't help enough small businesses. So that's a question to me. The question to you, Jonathan, from Marianne. Thanks, Jonathan, for some of the street closures to allow for more room for pedestrians, like on the McInnes overpass. Are more planned?
Yeah, we actually have a report coming to council on Monday from our engineering department, and a notice of motion from Councillor Patrick Johnson on this issue. This has kind of been one of the interesting things that have come out of the crisis, is cities around the world have kind of recognized, how do we actually make space for pedestrians and cyclists in this time of social distancing, and at the same time seeing that a lot of our road space is being used much less there. So we've already seen a few examples in New Westminster where we've actually reallocated road space to make more room for pedestrians and cyclists, and we think there might actually be some more opportunities to be able to pursue that. So what I'd say is stay tuned to council next Monday. This is going to be on our agenda.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Another question for me and then a question for you, or comment from Michael. He says, I can see the mark of the NDP on the minority government, and I don't think he would have done the assault weapon ban if he didn't have to work with the NDP. Thank you, Michael. We've actually made a big difference on pushing on a lot of these issues, and that's why the Parliamentary Budgetary Officer estimates now that more than 3 million Canadians, including students who have disabilities or students with children, have access to benefits that wouldn't have otherwise without the NDP pushing. And so thanks for your comments. And and we're not going to give up. We're going to continue to press because our principle is that as we get through this pandemic for COVID-19, no one should be left behind. Absolutely no one. And I'm saying hi again to everybody watching. We've had a number of people tune in the last few minutes. Peter Julian, MP for New Westminster Burnaby, with our special guest on this Facebook town hall, Mayor Jonathan Cote, Mayor of the City of New Westminster, and also a national spokesperson on transit issues. I was impressed with him intervening at the Finance Committee a week and a half ago as the national spokesperson on transit, and along with one other city mayor, Mike Hurley from Burnaby, they spoke to the issue of making sure cities are not left behind by the COVID-19 pandemic. We've got another question coming in, Jonathan, from Kathy. She says, the Q2Q needs to come back. We need to support this as well. What's up with the Q2Q is the question.
Yeah, so the Q2Q was one of the items that was shut down because of COVID-19. It was having some difficulty with social distancing, so there's definitely that angle as well too. So right now there isn't any immediate plans to reopen the Q2Q, and I think it's something we're going to have to work on into the future there. I am confident we will be able to restart the Q2Q. But one other thing is, I think important to recognize is the city is also facing some significant financial challenges because of the crisis. We're estimating the city is going to lose about $11 million in revenue. So there will be a few of our regular services that might have to be cut back for this year. And we're certainly hoping to get all of our services back up and running the way residents enjoy and can use to the most. But there might be some services like the Q2Q that do have a bit of an impact there. So we are hoping to get it up and running again. It was a really important service in the community, but for now it does remain closed.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. We've got Deepak, who's stated, please help keep community television in front of government. We're not forgetting that. Absolutely, Deepak. Archer says, thanks, Jonathan, for moving forward with COVID-19 safety in walking and jogging. And we've got a couple of more questions. Louisa asks, what are the, hi, Peter, I was just wondering, what are the updates on help with regards to those with implied status right now? We actually, in terms of people who have implied status, we've seen a number of people who have resident work permits, and they have expired because the federal government has not provided for renewal, and that's put a lot of people in hardship. We have pressed the government, and I just wrote to the finance minister. Jenny Kwan, our immigration critic, has written to the immigration minister, and Daniel Blakey, our employment critic, has written to the Minister of Employment. So we're pushing at all buttons for the government to renew these work permits and make sure that people who have implied status are not left behind during this COVID-19 pandemic. We have a question for you, Jonathan, from Leslie. Heard the City of Vancouver is proposing moving recreation classes outside this summer. Is there any plans for Recreation New West to move recreation classes potentially outside for the summer months?
Yeah, so I think it's a really good idea that we want to explore, and I think the bigger thing the city wants to work on is we want to get a good understanding from a public health perspective. How do we get back to running a lot of the valuable programs that we have here in the city? And I think initially moving more things outdoors, seems like a logical first steps for things. Interesting, the city was already talking about before the crisis hit about running some of its regular classes in some of our city parks and moving outside there. So definitely I think it's an interesting idea. And as we start to really think about how do we get our programs up in place, how do we make sure our community facilities are safe and people feel safe going to them and participating in activities, some of those solutions might be about moving some of the programming outside.